Hello everyone, welcome back to the Fetch Quest podcast, where we talk about video games and more. Today I am joined by my fellow co-host, Logan Brewer.
What's up, guys?
So guys, tonight I thought, it'd be pretty fun to just go to the blast from the past and talk about some good old...
I hate you, ghost and dickheads.
Brewer, you good, bro?
I'm not good. I'm playing Ghost and Dickheads, guy.
Ghost and Dickheads, is that the sequel to Ghost and Goblins?
God, I just got hit again. Fuck, dang it.
Sounds like a skill issue, if I've ever heard it.
You play these games and you'll find out it's a bigger skill issue.
I'm a Souls player. Give me the challenge.
It will be a challenge. It's 10 times harder than your shitty little Souls games.
Which brings us to today's topic. We're going to be talking about a little short video today. We're going to be talking about NES difficulty and how, that shit was really fucking hard back in the day, and how difficulty's kind of changed compared to nowadays.
Back in my day,
we had to play our fucking Zeldas with no map.
or with a really shitty map.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that little vid of you playing Zelda 1 for the first time was still very funny.
Oh yeah, shoutouts to our short where we recorded like 5 seconds of me playing the first Zelda game on the Switch NES thing.
Yeah, and you died very quickly.
Yeah, that game's pretty hard, I'm not even gonna lie.
Well, if you think that's hard, go play Ninja Gaiden Ghost and Dickheads.
He means Ghosts and Goblins.
No, it's Ghost and Dickheads. Because the people who made it are fucking dickheads, I swear to God.
Bro, you gotta remember to specify, dude.
Well, actually, half of the games made back then were made by dickheads, because I swear, almost any fucking game on an NES cartridge, if it isn't like a Mario or something that was designed that they wanted you to love, majority of them, even like licensed games like fucking Jaws or something, are probably like twice as hard as any of your modern day games. And not for the good reasons.
Yeah, so the reason why we bring this up about the difficulty specifically on old games like the NES is because typically, like, games could not have the amount of storage space that they can nowadays, because you have fucking you have games that like can take up massive amounts of storage. Like, I'm pretty sure the new
Spider-Man is like 100 gigabytes. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I think Starfield is taking up like 150.
Lord knows. Especially once DLC gets added into the mix, which it'll inevitably probably will.
Jesus.
That and basic patches that are going to be like 30 gigabytes to fix a couple bugs.
So true. But they essentially couldn't put that much space on the consoles that they were able to work on. So what they had to do is to make the content like kind of worth it and like add some just more like just have like a bigger playtime for the people buying the games. They made it artificially a little bit more difficult than what it probably should have been. Just so
I ain't gonna say a little bit.
Yeah, just to make people play longer before they beat it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it was a very different culture back then too, because before, like, the NES games we're talking about were just like Atari games, and most of the games back then kind of tried to mimic how arcade games would be. So, just go for a high score, or it's games that like have one screen and they repeat a lot, because with the technology, you couldn't really do too much besides that. I mean, there were some rare exceptions, but the technology was not the greatest back then.
No, it really wasn't. And like for example, like going back to Zelda, it was the first Zelda game, so obviously like the philosophies when designing that game were completely different to say like Tears of the Kingdom. Which, by the way, if you guys want a Tears of the Kingdom episode, give us a like and subscribe, please, because if you like this video, then maybe you would like some Tears of the Kingdom content.
Maybe comment that it's a really good game. Ooh.
But but when I initially played the first Zelda game, it just really kind of clicked to me that like I felt restricted in like how I was able to like approach the map and the world around me. But it's also like I can see like where this game was artificially made for difficulty, just so it can like increase my playtime, you know what I mean?
Well, the thing is with Zelda, that isn't even one of the bad examples, because Zelda, I'd say, is one of the more fair ones. Don't get me wrong, it is still pretty tough, but if you go at it honestly and use like manual and stuff, you can get through that game. Now,
Yeah.
Ghost and Dickheads, on the other hand, and Ninja Gaiden, those are usually two like notorious ones.
When he refers to Ghosts and Dickheads, he means Ghosts and Goblins, for reference.
This has been established, guy. No need to worry.
Oh my god.
Because any of our listeners who ever played any of the NES games, they will know that name in infamy.
So true. Yeah,
it was hard.
Yeah, Ghosts and Goblins, like correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a 2D platformer where like the armor system was like really screwy, and not just that, but they placed enemies fucking everywhere.
You die in 2 hits.
Awesome, just like Mario.
Yeah, another thing like similar to Ninja Gaiden as well. One of the things that's the worst about the NES generation, a very common trend, let's say, is that enemies would constantly be respawning. Like, you kill an enemy, they would respawn right behind them. And it isn't like there was like some time to deal with it. No, you gotta kill an enemy, and then it just immediately respawns on a platform you gotta jump on. But if you hit the enemy, you immediately die because of a pit that you fall into. That type of shit.
Jeez.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
They're games that can be completed in probably like 20 minutes or an hour when you know what you're doing. But in reality, it will take so much longer than that because you have to learn and master those games.
Yeah, but that's also just a byproduct of like the time period of like, oh, these games they weren't really that big, so obviously like, you know, we need to make people like the money that people spend on this kind of worth it in terms of playtime.
Yeah, because starting out, like most NES cartridges at the beginning could store like 40 kilobytes of data, and in modern day, that's enough for just like a couple seconds of a sound bit.
Which is crazy, by the way.
They had to store entire games in there.
Which is crazy, by the way, to like think of comparison-wise, like some of the like games that like are considered masterpieces and, you know, generational defining were just really, really small in terms of like size and download speeds, and then compare that to like the quote-unquote like generational defining games nowadays. Like the size comparison, like for the file, is ginormous. Like Elden Ring, which is a really well optimized game and really huge, 50 gigabytes.
Yeah, that's one of the better examples. 50 gigabytes is at least more reasonable. Because most things, if they're not on a Nintendo console, just like Nintendo at least still does good file compression, probably because they have to. Like Tears of the Kingdom was about 18 gigabytes, probably 20 after updates and stuff. But still, for how massive that game is, I'd say that's fair. Now, on the other hand, you go to some fucking Call of Duty game, and it's like a 300 gigabyte file with a 50 gigabyte update.
Yeah, no, that's just a byproduct of like the developers not optimizing the games and like cutting down on where, you know, the like useless stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, file compression just isn't taken seriously anymore because back then, like even in the generations going up, you know, they would actually have to do it to some degree, even if it was stored on 2 discs, because if you wanted all of your game on there, you had to figure out some tricks to crunch stuff down. But now, since there's more means, like there's micro SD cards, there's extra external hard drives, and whatever sticks you can use for PS5s and Xboxes, now they literally have no incentive to compress it. So now you're getting just these bloated games that should not be taking up that much of your storage, coming in at like 200 gigabytes.
Yeah, like another good example recently is Armored Core 6. Probably is FromSoft's biggest game in terms of size. It's only 50 gigabytes.
Yeah, well, FromSoft gives half a rat's ass about their games, so
yeah,
50 gigs, I think is more on the reasonable side. It's still large, don't get me wrong, but for the textures and how big some of the games are with the worlds and stuff, 50 gigs is reasonable.
It really is.
No damn COD game should be 200 fucking gigabytes.
which we'll talk about later in a future episode about like our dissatisfaction with like modern games and optimization, but more back to like the difficulty of like NES games.
More so that was just a reason for why the things were as they are now and back then.
No, of course.
Back then it was just hardware limitations, so like you said before, they made games really fucking difficult, so they would take longer to beat.
Yeah, of course. So here's something I want to bring up. Think of like iconic NES games, like the first Legend of Zelda game, Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 3. Mm-hmm. They're all like iconic games, but you cannot tell me you have not died at least like a dozen times.
But again, some of the Nintendo made ones at least, like Mario Bros. I've beaten that just fine, no problem. I haven't done the original Zelda yet, but like Mario 3 and 2, they're also fine. Lost Levels, on the other hand, is kind of fucky.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting story. So, for those who don't know, there was a game released in the 90s for America called Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, which it
wasn't released in the 90s. That's what has been renamed now.
Which it isn't technically called The Lost Levels. In actuality, it's the real Super Mario Bros. 2. But that game was so difficult that the people who were publishing it in
Japan
thought it was too hard for Western audiences, so they decided to not release it and instead release Doki Doki Literature. Not Doki Doki Literature.
Did you
Doki Doki Panic.
No. We're going back. They released Doki Doki Literature Club.
I'm sorry, but Doki and like the word Doki is just like synonymous with Literature Club with me. I'm sorry.
But here, I'll go over it real quick. So basically, you had Mario 1. That was good for everyone. Be a little hard sometimes, but it's a game that everyone could reasonably beat if you just played it enough times. Now, Mario Bros. 2, on the other hand, now that was bullshit. that was just straight up bullshit. There's so much I could say about that game because my 8-year-old self downloaded it unknowingly, played it, and I wanted to fucking kill myself. Yeah, but you see, because 8-year-olds like me were wanting to kill myself, they in Japan they were like, them Americans really ain't good at video games, are they? Because that could be a whole other thing with Mega Man too, but they re-released the game instead called Doki Doki Panic, which is also a 2D platformer, but they took out the like circus characters in there and replaced them with Mario characters, and that's how we got that game as Mario Bros. 2 in the West.
Yeah, which isn't the real Mario Bros. But enemies from that, like some enemies and characters from Doki Doki Panic, are now like signature Mario characters like Birdo and Shy Guy. Yeah,
which is kind of funny to think about, just because they thought we couldn't handle the games.
Yeah, little do we know. Well, I mean, little do they know, we're just as stupid as the rest of the world.
But yeah, eventually, Mario Bros. 3 released. That was the actual one in Japan as well, kinda. And then after that, on the SNES, we finally got it as The Lost Levels and a compilation cart. So there you go. That's the history of that.
But that game perfectly like is encapsulated in like the difficulty of NES games, and like that's like an extreme example of a game where the publishers didn't think it would like fit well with an audience because of the difficulty. But if you really think about it, like the Lost Levels in terms of difficulty is just like other games at the time, like Ghosts and Goblins. Ghosts and Goblins is probably harder.
No, Ghosts and Goblins is a hell of a lot harder. I could at least beat multiple levels of the Lost Levels, and I could probably beat it now. Ghosts and Goblins, I would literally want to go into a bathtub with a toaster if I tried to beat it.
Jesus.
Because again, I've been playing it right now, and I have died more times than I can count.
Jeez, that's crazy. Away from 2D platformers a little bit, I want to talk about some of the JRPGs like Final Fantasy that were on the NES.
Before we mention that, could I mention one thing?
Yeah, what's up?
So, you know how we were mentioning that, like, Japan thought us Americans were very bad at video games?
Yes.
Not just Mario, there was another franchise that did something similar. The only difference is they still released the game over us in the West. over here for us in the West. What they did for most of the Mega Man games, I don't know if it was all of them, but for the majority of them, because they thought the West couldn't handle the difficulty, let's see what it is. Normal mode in Japan is hard mode in the West, and then the normal mode we have in the West is basically an easy mode in Japan.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I don't even want to get into Japan's hard mode.
Oh god, I bet that's fucking crazy.
So yeah, if you played Mega Man on hard mode on an American copy, you basically just played Japan's normal mode.
That's really weird how like they would artificially like change the game like that because of like just to meet like demographics.
Yeah, I mean, in full fairness, Mega Man's still a pretty hard game, the older ones.
Yeah.
Because I've played a decent couple of them, and I've beaten a couple Mega Mans as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, some of the bosses on there are on rankings of like hardest bosses in said genre or whatnot. Like, I know Yellow Devil is pretty up there.
Yeah, that dude's fucking notorious for killing runs and stuff.
Yeah.
That or just abusing the hell out of glitches to beat him instead.
It'd be like that. But one thing I want to talk about is JRPGs at the time. Think of games like Final Fantasy. Like, the first one is really short. Same with, like, the first few Dragon Quest games. And a trend that I noticed between all of them is that to make up for the lack of content, they would have, like, pretty decently sized level spikes for enemies, requiring you to grind.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I think JRPGs got a lot of their stigmatism. That and SNES era. SNES era wasn't as bad because you had games like Chrono Trigger, which
I was just about to mention Chrono Trigger. No shit. Before this episode even started, I had Chrono Trigger like ready to talk about.
Yeah, but like Chrono Trigger, you never have to grind in there because usually it would be strategy you'd have to change up. There was not one point in Chrono Trigger where I was playing it where I was like, man, this is hard. I should go fight like 20,000 enemies to beat them.
Yeah, I don't think I've had a game over in Chrono Trigger. I mean, it's also, like, one of the easier JRPGs at the time, but that's not saying it's bad or anything, but it's just, like, that game was much more well-optimized, like, difficulty-wise.
But yeah, for a lot of the games back then, as you were saying, you had to fight a fuck ton of enemies to get to a proper level to fight anything, which has carried on nowadays to where people just hate JRPGs because of the older ones. When I'm like, please, people, just go play Persona 5. It's well optimized.
Persona 5 Royal, that game is awesome.
Or like the 20 other JRPGs I could probably think of right now.
Exactly. Play Chrono Trigger, play Persona 5 Royal, play Persona 4 Golden, play Shin Megami Tensei. That's also a really good one.
Yeah. Well, people are going to complain about that one being too hard.
Oh god, yeah. But that's another hard series to talk about later. So... But yeah, it's really crazy because, like, that's one way people would change the difficulty, which is really, like, interesting, too, because, like, as a juxtaposition to that, think of I'm pretty sure it was released on the NES, Earthbound.
Earthbound, yeah. I mean, Earthbound's a bit more playable, but it still has some just messy aspects. It hasn't aged too well compared to Mother 3.
Yeah, of course, but, like, that Earthbound is considered to be like a really easy RPG or JRPG.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a weird juxtaposition because that game is actually like full length.
Yeah. Well, so if you want to get to a hard one, maybe do the original Earthbound or just not even Earthbound, just Mother.
Yeah, Mother 1, yeah.
Well, in the West, Earthbound Beginnings when it was re-released on the Wii U.
For those who don't know, we're referring to the Mother series, aka Earthbound. What happened is that Japan sucked when it comes to releasing these games, and they released Mother 1, which sold very well in Japan. So they released Mother 2. Mother 2, which is the most iconic one because they retitled it to be Earthbound in America.
And the 12-year-old is in Super Smash Brothers.
NES! So...
EK Fire!
Earthbound is technically Mother 2. And what sucks is that it didn't do too well in the West, like, sales-wise, even though it's, like, considered to be one of the best games ever made.
Yeah, and because of that, also, I just want to note, its cartridge is, like, $600.
Yeah, of course.
Because of that, also, I just want to note, its cartridge is, like, $600.
Oh,
Yeah, because of that, also, I just want to note, its cartridge is, like, $600.
Yeah, That's crazy.
The last time I saw a copy at a convention, someone was trying to sell it for 800
That is nuts.
because it also had like a manual with it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But then Mother 3 was released for Japan but not America because of Earthbound's poor sales, which really sucks because we still are yet to hear of a Mother 3 release in America. So don't feel bad if you question who the fuck is this Lucas kid in Smash Bros.
Well, that I'm also gonna say it's morally correct to pirate Nintendo games sometimes,
Yep, sometimes.
especially Mother 3, because unless you fully learn Japanese, there's literally no other way to play the game other than to pirate it and do the fan translation.
But even then, it's not 100% accurate.
No. I will note one thing. A professional actually worked on a translation for Mother 3 to the point where if Nintendo was ever to re-release it, they literally could just buy it from the dude who made it because it's that fucking accurate. So,
Jeez, that's crazy.
no, you can actually play the game to that degree. It may not be perfect for like the author's sake, like when something's translated over, sometimes it's by word and meaning, so it won't be their original intent.
Japan is a very meaning-heavy language. It's not like a...
Wait. Japan has a meaning-heavy every language is meaning-heavy.
No, what I mean, it's not... how do I say this? English is very much more specific when we talk. Meanwhile, Japan is, a lot of, conceptual stuff and a lot of, meaning alongside with, nouns and whatnot.
Well, no, the way they structure their sentences is just very different. That, and they don't have things like pronouns in there. There's no she, her, he, him.
They, them, yeah.
Yeah, so, hey, you're never gonna have to worry about misgendering someone there.
Unwoke, unmodern.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, but just back to the NES conversation because we're about to wrap up here. But essentially, we just wanted to sit down a little bit and talk about a little bit of the difficulty section because though these NES games are great, it is a weird little era of time of developers making these games really hard just to extend the playtime. Meanwhile, we really don't have a problem with playtime nowadays because games are much bigger now, and
if anything, people complain about games being too long sometimes now.
Yeah, people are still fucking struggling to finish Baldur's Gate 3 even though that game's been out for a while.
Oh lordy.
I know, but it's just that's just that's just a consequence of small storage space and having to work within your confines.
There's still a lot of really good games on NES, don't get me wrong, but
yeah, of course.
It was that baby steps era with the pixel art and stuff, and also just how the games were being built. Super Nintendo is when things were going in stride. That I can always think of so many good games on the Super Nintendo that I would always be down to replay.
Yeah, Super Mario World, Chrono Trigger, you had Link to the Past, etc.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I go to the NES, not so much.
Yeah, it's not as good as the system as SNES, unfortunately, but it's just hardware limitations.
It's part of its time. I'd say also a similar effect to Nintendo 64 and GameCube. While I enjoyed a lot of games on the Nintendo 64, a lot of them have not aged the best compared to the GameCube because,
Mario 64.
Yeah, it was those baby steps era of the 3D space. So developers are really trying to figure it out. There were some 3D platformers out there that used fucking tank controls. What you would do is to turn in any direction, you don't just press left. No. You press left, it turns your character slowly, sort of like a tank, and then you press forward to go in that direction.
L.
Yep. Mario 64 does have its problems, I will admit. It hasn't aged the best, but it is nowhere near as bad as something like fucking Bubsy.
Bubsy. Oh my god. Bubsy 3D, that's a fucking game. Holy shit. I can't believe how it exists.
It is a game, technically.
But But yeah, guys, with that being said, if you like this sort of content and the smaller videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video around so we can get more people with the views.
Yeah, please comment which NES game makes you want to go into a bathtub with a plugged-in toaster. Because trust me, there's tons of them, especially if they're made by a shit company called LJN.
So true. But yeah, with that, guys, thank you so much for watching this difficulty section about the difficulty video on NES games. But with that being said, we've been your host, Fetch Quest out.
Adios, blows.